Hi everyone, welcome back again to Shiny Conference 2023. And what an amazing community everyone has been today. I have so many links to bookmark by now already. My tabs are fully filled. And speaking of communities, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the R4DS Online Learning Community. And for those who are new, it is a community of R learners at all skill levels working together to improve their skills. The next speaker we have here with us today is none other than John Harmon, who runs the R4DS community. He is an avid fan of The Mandalorian, and a little bird told us that he was waiting for inspiration at the Shiny conference to write tests for his package, Shiny Slack, as well. And on that note, John, the stage is yours to present your talk on baking JavaScript into a Shiny package.
Thank you very much. Like you said, I'm John Harmon. I run the R4DS Online Learning Community. Um, and I'm going to talk to you today about baking JavaScript into a Shiny package. These slides are available at r4ds.io/shinyconf2023. That URL is on every slide, so it should be easy to find it to go to there. I'm also John the Geek everywhere online, various social media, or you can find me on R4DS. So first, I don't have to answer this as much as I originally thought I might have to answer this of why JavaScript, because we've had a lot of talk about JavaScript at this conference. But I will say, you might wonder why you should care. This is a R conference, some Python, but I'd argue if you're making Shiny apps in R, learning some very basic JavaScript is more useful than learning Python. I only know a little JavaScript, just kind of enough to limp through, but that unlocks all kinds of powers. And so to try to prove that a little bit, this is the head of just a super simple Shiny app. Like I put almost nothing in it. And within this, you can see there are 4 JavaScript files that are loaded. And importantly, the one that has like the meat of Shiny, like all of the UI stuff, is JavaScript. Moreover, JavaScript is the web. It's always the most popular language on all kinds of different surveys. This one happens to be from GitHub. It's like this what code is used in repositories on GitHub. It's number 1. And if you see number 4 is TypeScript, which is a type of JavaScript, basically. And why that is useful is that if you have an idea for something to add to a Shiny app, there's a good chance that someone has done something like it in JavaScript. And so if you know how to use the JavaScript libraries that are out there within R, you can expand what you do. For example, yesterday we talked about time zones, and Tanho has written some code. I wrote some code. Eric Nance wrote some code that handles that. Someone should probably standardize that and wrap it up for Shiny. Just saying. So after you watch this, maybe someone will want to go do that. The other reason is that JavaScript and R just play together really well. We saw John Cohen earlier today, and you might have heard mention of his book, JavaScript for R. It's very good. I highly recommend it. We also had Creating a JavaScript Library for Your Shiny Application by Ashley Baldry. He dove into the JavaScript side of things. There are also just numerous talks and workshops. I think PositConf this fall has at least one JavaScript for Shiny workshop, and I think maybe more than one. If you search for JavaScript Shiny on the web, you'll find all kinds of things. So, all right. So hopefully I've convinced you that JavaScript is useful. So next, why wrap it into a package? There's this famous quote. Well, this version of it isn't the exact quote from Hadley. This is from the second edition of R4Data Science, but I think it really summarizes it really well. Copy and paste is a powerful tool, but you should avoid doing it more than twice. And the reason they say that, in this context, they're talking about why you should write functions and scripts and not just write stuff at the command line for R code, or not just copy paste things you've done before, because you can screw up the copy paste. You can change a variable name in one place, but not change it somewhere else. And it's even more so true when you have large collections of code, or in this case, where we've got collections of code in 2 different languages that need to talk to one another. Just the chance of screwing something up is very high. And if you find some mistake or improvement, or you want to add some security aspects because you watched Talk and it made you worried about all of your Shiny apps, you would have to do that in all of your code, or you can just do it in the package. So to kind of demonstrate that, this is a version of some code just to put the JS cookie JavaScript library into a Shiny app. It doesn't actually do anything with that library. It just embeds it. You have to remember to copy over your script that you wrote to connect to the library after creating the directory for it. You need to tell Shiny where that is. And you have to reference both this online script and your local script. And you just have to make sure you don't screw all that up. Or now that it's wrapped into a package, you just call this function, cookies, add cookie handlers, wrap your UI in it, and it's done. And it's done all of that stuff for you. There's even more when you want to deal with like reading cookies and writing cookies. But that's why I wrote this package. I wanted to make this easier. And then also I wanted to leverage the community and continue to make it better. And in fact, as soon as I wrote this package, I got a pull request from Jacqueline Nolis to improve something. And so just by getting it out there onto CRAN, actually it might have been before it was on CRAN, but it gets better like right away. So in doing that, I put together this recipe of what you should do if you're writing a R package that contains JavaScript. But first, this is an online conference. And if you've ever looked up a recipe online, you know that first I have to tell you why this recipe is important to me. So as we've mentioned, I run the R4DS Online Learning Community. If you know about us, it's most likely because of Tidy Tuesday, our social media project where we release a data set every week, and then people make visualizations and models and all kinds of things and post about them. But we're also a Slack community. We have about 15,000 members right now. About 500 of those are active every week. And a large part of that is we have mentors on the Slack who will answer questions. And it's just volunteers there to answer your R questions and some Python and some things other than those. I have a video about that. I did a talk in 2020 at our studio. So if you load the slides, there's a link to that talk about the mentorship. And then we also, starting actually right after that talk, we started doing book clubs for basically all of the R related books. We have 20 to 30 active book clubs at any time. The link there is to a talk I did at one of the meetings about the other clubs that we had, but we've added a ton of books since then. So I have these things, and I created apps to help me manage those. They're not really pretty apps, but they work. And so those two apps, the two main apps for this are Mentor Dash, or the R4DS mentor tool, where we see all the questions that are currently unanswered on the site, and we can load those to go answer them. This updates live, so it needs to be able to talk to Slack, and it needs to only see the things that the user is supposed to be able to see. We also have this Book Clubber app. This was because we kept having confusion. So when we start a new club, we want everyone to sign up and say, hey, when are you available? So we can choose a day and time that works for everyone. As I mentioned yesterday, that these are worldwide clubs, and so time zones are very important for that. And just getting that all sorted out is a pain. But also knowing who the user is important. And so we wanted a way to connect that so we can tell the people, okay, we chose a time. The one that you indicated would work for you is this, and here we go. So for both of those, I wanted to be able to sign in with Slack. And so I wrote the Shiny Slack package, which has my favorite hex sticker I've ever designed. I really need to print those because I just think it's beautiful. But I did, like, I made this package. It makes it relatively easy to connect Slack and Shiny. You can log in with Slack, and then you can load things from different Slack teams. I gave a talk about this, a lightning talk at our StudioConf last summer. The video and slides are in the links on this talk. I also did a deep dive into like the code behind it for this project club that we have at R4DS. The videos and slides are there. And when I was doing that, it's like, oh, this is kind of hard to explain. So I abstracted out these two packages, like out of that package. Scenes, it's available on CRAN. It's a little bit similar to Shiny Router. You can go see that if you would like. And then cookies. So that leads us to cookies. This was inspired by the cookies chapter from JavaScript for R. I couldn't find a like stable, active package anywhere. The link there is to an issue that I put into a package that did some of the things I wanted to do, and it's at open for, I think it's been over a year now, with no reply. And so I made my own version, and now that version is available on CRAN. And by doing that, by making it ready for CRAN, by doing all the, making sure all the tests check, or all the checks pass, all the tests, that it has tests, that it has all the things, that led me to develop this recipe. So, all right, now we're back to the recipe. This is not going to tell you like everything about what to do with JavaScript, and it's not going to tell you everything about how to build a package. This is the stuff that's in between. So again, I recommend the talk from earlier today about the JavaScript side of things. I will be mentioning the R packages book a few times and linking to it. So, but without further ado, let's dive in. So, all right, the first thing that you have to pay special attention to when you're wrapping a JavaScript library is the licensing. Most likely, whatever library you want to wrap will have licensing information. If it doesn't, probably don't wrap it because it's hard to know how it's okay to use it. So the first thing you want to do is check that library's license and then use a compatible license. What a compatible license means, well, I'm not a lawyer, but I do recommend that licensing chapter from R packages, especially the second edition that's available online right now. They talk a lot about different licensing options and what you might want to do, or how you can make that work, like how you can make it compatible. Since you're starting with the JavaScript library, this is relatively easy because just, make sure it matches whatever license that you're going to do. Make sure your package lines up well with the library. But as they mentioned in that chapter, you're going to want to mention or create this license.note. You wouldn't normally need that when you're creating an R package, but with a JavaScript package or with other things from outside of R embedded, you want to make sure you explain how those things are licensed. In the book, they say to do this if the license is different from your package, but in my case, I used the MIT license, so did the JS cookies people, but I included license.note just to say that, to make sure that there was no confusion when anyone is looking at my package or when it was being reviewed on CRAN. And then in the next couple of sections, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what to do with that licensing info. So for any R package, you have a description, and within that, you will have author's information. In that author's information, unless for some reason you're wrapping some library that they ask you not to identify them or something, you're going to want to give credit to the maintainer or maintainers of the JavaScript library. So you want to give them a copyright holder, CPH reference within your authors, and put a comment in there of, JS cookie JavaScript library is what they're the copyright holder for. You also have a description within that description file. You're going to want to mention probably that, this wraps the JS cookie JavaScript library. And when you do that, anytime you reference some other library in a CRAN package, you want that in single quotes. That was something that I think I learned by getting my initial submission rejected. So single quotes. Likewise, if you have any URLs in your description, so if you are telling people where to find that library, for example, you want those in angle brackets. And that's true for any URL anywhere in your description. All right, so the next thing is this inst folder. This is things that are installed when your package is installed. It's just a folder that is copied into the folder of the installation folder for your package. You want a subdirectory within that folder. Now, I call it JS. A lot of people call it HTML widgets for somewhat historical reasons, or whatever, for reasons of how things are built. Some people call it www because that's what you often call it when you're building a Shiny app. It doesn't matter what you call it. You just want a subfolder within inst. The reason, I'll talk in a minute about why a subfolder is handy to have there, but have that subfolder. I use JS, makes it clear. And you want to put copies of the JS files that you're going to work with in there. That's in case they can't be reached on the internet. You want to provide them to your users. And then any JS that you write yourself, you would put here. And I just added this link that actually has an R package to help you minify JS files and also HTML and CSS. And so minify those. The reason for that, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but basically minify is faster, and you don't want these JavaScript files to be slowing down your app, or everyone's app, anyone who uses your package. In addition, if the license of the library and your package are not the same, you put a copy of the license in this JS folder with the files. There's a little bit about that in the R packages book, but basically that's just to make everyone happy that it's clear how things are licensed. So the license.note and then the license file itself here. All right. The next thing you need, most likely, is you're going to want to use this HTML dependency function from HTML tools. What this will do is add each JavaScript file exactly once. And you don't want it to get repeatedly added if someone else is referencing the same library you are in some other package. And so you don't want your Shiny app to have this crazy code that keeps loading the same files, because that slows things down. The HTML dependency allows you to load from npm source when available. npm stands for Node Package Manager, but it's used by a lot of JavaScript libraries. It's distributed around the world, which makes it load faster. And then, Photo told us about Shiny performance yesterday, and so these are just things that you can do to make things more performant. If that version is not available, you want to be able to load the version that you included with your package so that people can still get access to the library. So an example of what that looks like, I have a couple exported functions around this, but this is the cookie dependency function, and it just adds this list of HTML tools dependencies. The first one is for that JS cookie library. I give it the name and the version that I am asking it to load, and that's how it knows, okay, yeah, only include this one time. And then I give it the root of the npm source, and I give it the folder as the file argument there, give it the folder within inst, and then package cookies. Those things together say, oh yeah, look in the inst folder of cookies. And then I intentionally give the script as a separate line that is named the same between the two. That way, that kind of checks. It'll lead to things breaking loudly if you did something weird. If you have a different JavaScript than you think you do, things like that. So that's what that's for. And then you're also going to have probably your own custom JavaScript that interfaces with that library. It's just a couple of simple things in there. And this is the example of the one that's loading my cookie input.js. Most of the stuff in here doesn't matter that much because it's unique, although, well, I mean, it's loading it from your package, so it's not going to be accidentally loading someone else's copy, but it's still only going to load it one time from your package, no matter how many times your package, like this function could be called 14 times, and it would still just load these two things exactly once. Um, oh, and sorry, you can see here that I didn't minify this. I just learned about how to do this easily today, and so I will be minifying this for the next version of cookies. So the next piece, again, I'm not going to go into all the details about communicating with JavaScript. The book JavaScript for R has a lot of details, and the Shiny docs have a lot of details. But I'm going to give an overview of some important pieces. In some ways, I'm lucky with cookies that I don't really have UI components. I don't have inputs or outputs. And so I get to skip over some of the extra complications. But all of those are pretty well documented. And again, you know, there's always going to be extra details of what you need, depending on exactly what you're doing. But all right, so first we need to figure out how can we talk from our Shiny app to the UI, to the JavaScript. The way you do that is there's this session, or this send custom message function attached to the Shiny session. And if you haven't ever looked at it, if you type !Shiny : session, it tells you all the things that are inside of that session variable that's passed around inside of your Shiny apps. And there's all kinds of stuff in there that's really interesting. And this is one of those things. And so it's a function that's passed around in the session. It allows you to essentially call a JavaScript function. So the type is the what handler you're going to be talking to, and the message is the arguments that you're sending to that handler. And then on the JavaScript side, you have Shiny add custom message handler. There's that type, and then that is a function. And that function might call other JavaScript functions. It might, you know, we'll see examples. But it is the thing that receives that call from the server side. So for an example of that, I have a few different versions of these that are returned by functions in my package. And this is an example: send custom message to cookies set. And it takes these 3 arguments as a list. And then on the JavaScript side, I have the call to add custom message handler. I call that cookie set. So you can see cookie set in the name there is the same as this send custom message. And it does all kinds of stuff. It does some error handling. Again, things that it did not do when I was doing this purely just copy paste. But once I started writing it as a package, it has some more things going on here. The important part is it calls these cookies.set and cookies.get from the JS cookie, and then it handles errors. That's what's happening there. All right. So on the other side, we've got JavaScript going, or, you know, the browser, the client, going back to the R, back to the server. Most of the way that you can do that is through this shiny.setInputValue that will put something into the input of Shiny. You'll send it back with an ID, which is the ID in the Shiny input. Optionally, you'll give it a type, which tells your server some things to do to handle that input, and then a value of what you're going to pass back into the input. If you have these types, again, I don't have time to go into all the details, but there's register input handler is a function that you want to call exactly once to tell Shiny how to handle things of that type. You want to make sure that that type has a very unique name, because on purpose, you're not allowed to like collide and take over someone else's handler. So you put that in the onload of your package. Onload is a special function that gets loaded, gets called, or it's things that get called when your package is, or when your package is first used by the user within a certain session. And then there's also Shiny events like Shiny Connected. Those are all documented on the Shiny help site, but it's important to know about those. And again, I'll show you an example that in my package, I have on the JavaScript side, my interface between my package and the JS cookie library. I have this get cookies function, and it is basically just pull the cookies out of the browser and then set input value of an input named cookies to all of those things. I call this when Shiny is connected. So when they load the page, I need to get those set. And so I actually in this case, I am setting it to I'm setting the starting ones. This is because of some craziness in, it turns out that there can be cookies that can't be touched by JavaScript. I'm not going to go into all the details about that, but I had to do this to be able to tell the difference between the ones that JavaScript can see and the ones that it can't see. And then I also have, whenever they like leave and come back from their browser, it calls it again. And I do that. That's something you have to kind of keep in mind of if they change the cookies outside of my app, because I am interacting with something outside of my app, I want to refresh that cookies list. In the time zone example, if they change the setting on their computer, in theory, you could call when they focus and you would get that information. And then this next bit. So you need to make sure that your code works with modules. You don't want it to only work from the root server. And this one feels wrong, the way that I wrote this. I like keep worrying that RStudio, like someone from RStudio is going to cut my feed talking about this because, and like I woke up at 3 o'clock certain that I was doing this wrong. But then, no, I don't think I am. Because the cookies object is something that is handled by the browser and it's like universal, I need it to be at the top. Like no matter where you're calling from, you need to be hitting that same cookies object. Either on the JavaScript side, I'd have to split it out, or on the R side. And you can, on the R side, do a little bit of a hack to find the root session. So to get out of the modules session, this feels like it's kind of okay, at least, because there's an unexported function that I found in Shiny that finds this ancestor session. So I didn't do exactly the same thing they did, but the same idea. And this will let you like find that root session because I need that input, the cookies input. It's the same input no matter where you are in your app. Yeah, so that's the idea there. And if someone knows like what I really should be doing, because again, this feels wrong, please open an issue in the repo. All right. So just in conclusion, the code you want may already exist in JavaScript. JavaScript libraries are more reusable in Shiny if there are packages. You can follow my recipe to create those packages. And for further reading, check out JavaScript for R by John Kuhn and R Packages 2E by Hadley Wickham and Jenny Bryan. If you want to find me, you can join the R4DS Online Learning Community. You can get to there from r4ds.io/join. If that link ever doesn't work, it's because, as we've seen here, Slack randomly expires the join link sometimes. And so just let me know and I'll rebuild it. You can also find me on social media, LinkedIn, Fosstodon, Twitter. I'm John the Geek on everything. All right, and thank you. That's my talk.
Thank you so much, John. I believe everyone learned a lot about learning about JavaScript in general, and I think the fear of entering into JavaScript as well was broken down a bit, and because there was a lot of discussion about entering JavaScript and Shiny. So we can jump into some questions that was asked in the chat. From Yaniv, there was a question on, is there a template or examples for license.note?
So both in the R Packages book, they link to one, and in the cookies repository, I've got one. It's not that complicated. It's just basically, you say for this library, this is the license for this other library. It's not as structured as a description file.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that makes sense. Yes. Thank you so much, John. So there is one other question from Louise. This copyright has nothing to do with the GPL style licenses, question mark. Typical copyright concept rather than copyleft.
Even in a copyleft, someone owns the copyright in order to tell you that you have freedom to use it. So those are the people who are making the decision about that license. So if you see actually every package being submitted to CRAN now has to have a copyright holder, no matter what your license is. Yeah, so it is still there. It's again, not a lawyer, but you need someone who is like in charge of making those decisions.
Yeah, that's understandable. And I believe that covers up the time for this talk as well. And
All right.
thank you once again, John, for sharing your thoughts here with us today. So, see you, John, and I hope
All
you
right.
enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. I'm sure I will.